yourself in.
Because it's time for the Matt Wyatt Show. The guy who's the color commentator for Mississippi State football and SEC baseball. So yeah, he brings a lot to the game, and he's right here.
Right now.
Online at thezone1059.com and on your radio at ESPN 105.9 The Zone.
All right. It is hump day. It's the middle of the week. Isn't it Wednesday? Hey, JB, it is Wednesday, isn't it?
When I got up this morning about 5:30 it was.
I'm telling you, I'm not really even asking that sarcastically. It just hit me that I wanted to make sure before
I took my garbage out this morning, so yeah, it's
okay.
Wednesday.
There you go. Yeah, mine was yesterday, so that means today is Wednesday. Okay, all right. So garbage day are the benchmarks that we mark time according to.
Pretty much.
Week to week. Yeah, garbage day. I need all the help I can get. Welcome in to the Wednesday edition of the show in the Farm Bureau studio. Farm Bureau, go with the home team. Farm Bureau Insurance Agents, your local hometown heroes. And local is the key. They are local. What's up, Derek? First to comment on Facebook saying hear, hear on the Facebook live stream. So hi to everyone tuning in on Facebook, on Periscope, on if you're watching the YouTube live stream. Hey to y'all. Thanks for tuning in. Everybody on the radio on the zone in Jackson, Central Mississippi. 50,000 watts of flame-throwing radio signal coming through your speakers. Y'all feel free to text me today on the Country Please and text line. I'm going to give you the number to that if you don't know it. Also, you can call me on the Davini Equipment phone line. Davini Equipment in Madison and in Jackson. Let's start it off right, shall we?
5 seconds left to play.
You're listening to the Matt Wyatt Show.
I want winners.
This crowd is alive.
Play to win the game.
Wyatt from the shotgun, 2 backs alongside.
Knock him out, John.
Wyatt gets the ball.
It won't be long.
Wyatt back to throw. Wyatt looks, fires toward the end zone. Passes, caught for a touchdown by Matthew Butler.
Speak to him.
The Matt Wyatt Show. He's Radio Wyatt.
Well, how am I going to go to college? I'll just play football.
Oh, are you ready now? Yeah, you hear Jack's voice. You hear our old buddy, our friend, the late, great Jerry Clower. Then you know you're ready. Welcome into the show. All right, so y'all text me on the Country Please and text line. It's 885-ESPN, 885-ESPN. If you need the number itself, it's 885-3776. Call me on the Davini phone. Here is the number to call. I'd love to hear your voice today. We'll talk about whatever y'all want to talk about, so you just call me. 995-1059. Got it? Those are 601 numbers. Again, the Davini Equipment phone, 995-1059. Hump day, everybody!
It's your chance to do the hump. Come on! Do the Humpty Hump. Come on, do the Humpty Hump. Check me out, y'all.
Yeah, happy hump day, everybody. So, hi to Paul, who's watching on Facebook, and he said he loved the vlog that I posted today. That'd be a video blog. Mash them together. Vlog. The vlog I posted today with my two heroes, Mary Liddy and Elvis. Yeah, I had to go downtown to Tupelo Hardware store yesterday, the store where Elvis got his first guitar. It's a really historic place. It's a cool, old, back-in-time experience if you've never been in there. JB's also checking out the Facebook stream, and he likes the shirt. Got my handy-dandy baseball logo Mississippi State shirt from the Mississippi State University Golf Course. Hit him up on Twitter at HailStateGC. Know what I'm doing? Okay. Team number 38 on the countdown of 100 teams in 100 days college football. That's coming up. And there is a really interesting tie. They couldn't have planned it this way. And if you're an Ole Miss fan, I just wonder if it means something. I'll tell you what I'm talking about coming up. Team number 38. Also, I have not forgotten, because I've got to tell you who Phil Steele says in his magazine is going to be the most, well, not improved, but the biggest surprise team in all of college football. You need to know who that is. We mentioned it on yesterday's show. I'll tell you another thing I'm excited about. Later today, if everything goes, schedules work, Steve Robertson from 24/7 Sports, Gene's page, is supposed to stop by and fill us in on recruiting for Mississippi State. I didn't get the chance to read it. We were doing some work around the house last night, but I saw the headline on Twitter that State picked up a recruit, a big-time receiver recruit. And it just seems to me that receiver recruiting for Mississippi State has been going better ever since Mike Leach got there, as you would think, but now it's starting to materialize. And so what I want to do is talk with Steve and see if he can kind of put it in terms we can understand as to how well it is indeed going. Are they recruiting better at the receiver position so far than they used to, or is that just is our vision on that thing sort of colored by the idea that we expect it to be better? Let's get the details on that. You had a bench clearing conversation in Major League Baseball last night.
Yes, indeed.
No punches were thrown, but JB, if we weren't in the middle of a pandemic, punches would have been thrown.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
No doubt about that. And so we're going to get into that and get some details. But first, let me start you off today with a phone call on the Davini Equipment phone. Davini Equipment in Madison, in Jackson, they are your Kubota dealer. If you need a mower, you need any kind of equipment, skid steers, construction equipment, tractors, go to Davini. Best deals, best people. You'll be glad, and service. So that's Davini Equipment, Highway 51, Madison, Spring Ridge Road in Jackson. On the Davini phone is Lynn. I think this is Lynn, our resident Mets fan. What's up, Lynn?
Hey, Matt, how you doing? Yeah, I'm a Mets fan. I was gonna call you. I didn't avoid you Monday or Tuesday. I wasn't available Tuesday. I slept Monday to go to work.
Oh, boy.
And I wanted to call today before I got on in bad service coming down 22 headed back into Mississippi. And you asked what I was going to ask you about, because I just seen it on my app last night about the benches clearing with the Astros. I was like, they got them. And I thought they might have really fought, but I guess they held it in check.
Yes, there was, I wouldn't even call it a scrum. Based on the video I saw, they did. The Astros came out of their dugout. They're sort of on the Dodgers side of home plate. They did sort of congregate, but that's the only word I could use to accurately describe it. They didn't do anything but sort of get in each other's vicinity. So, and there's no question that, well, if we hadn't been, if you didn't have social distancing and people wearing masks and the coronavirus, they would have been fighting. There's no doubt about it.
Oh, yeah, but, man, if you mad enough to walk out to the mound and the bench is clear, somebody's supposed to get hit.
Regardless.
If I have to walk out to the mound, I'm hitting somebody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, why walk out there for nothing?
Pandemic
right?
or no. Yeah, I mean, you get Robin Ventura like that.
That's great. Hey, well, look.
Hey, man, that's all I was going to call and talk to you about. I'm going to let you back to the show, man.
Okay.
I enjoy it when I get to listen to it.
Thanks, Lynn. I appreciate the call.
Have a good man.
You too,
yeah.
man. Be
Yeah,
safe
man.
on the road. Hey, and your Mets are going to get a win tonight. You can watch it on ESPN Plus if you want to. And the reason they're going to win is they're playing the Red Sox. The Red Sox have only won one game in their first 5. Mets are 3-2. But it's in New York at Citi Field, and Jacob deGrom, the Cy Young favorite in the National League, is going to pitch tonight. So deGrom's going to mow down the Red Sox, and the Mets will get a win tonight, go to 4-2. There is an early show prediction for you. All right. Today, July 29th, is a special day. It was a special day in Louisiana on this day in 1992. Because that's when Dakota Rain Prescott came into the world. On this day in 1992. DAK, I don't know if you're listening. He's probably not. DAK, I don't know if you're listening, but happy birthday to you, sir. Number 15 in your program, number 1 in your heart. DAK Prescott today is 27 years old. I have not had more fun watching any single college football player than DAK Prescott in his 4 years, particularly his last 3 and especially his last 2 at Mississippi State. Now, I didn't say number 4 in your program, and I know he's the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys. But the reason I care is because of what he did for the Bulldogs at Mississippi State. So on Dak's birthday, I have two things that you're about to get in your ear. Number one, highlights what it sounded like watching Dak Prescott play back in 2014. And then after that, I have a question that some of y'all are going to answer with your heart, and the rest of y'all are going to answer with your head. And it's going to be a really interesting experiment. Right after these highlights, on his birthday, a minute-long highlight package of what it sounded like 6 years ago when Dak took over.
Blitz. Prescott hit as he left it far. And this tackle. Bear Wilson. Prescott. Prescott.
That deserved an oh my.
Dak Prescott a run all the way, and he's got a big opening. And a stiff arm, Dak Prescott. This is what he does better than anybody in the SEC. Touchdown. He's in trouble. Gets out of it momentarily. Now throws. Wide open, Jamion Lewis. He might take it. Yes, he will. Another Mississippi State touchdown.
Prescott, big and strong, gets away from a couple of Wildcats. Now he's got a bunch of room. Instead, he's got a wide open receiver, too. And he's got his man. Wide open and going into the end zone is Malcolm Johnson, and Mississippi State strikes first.
Prescott looking for somebody to throw to, takes off. He's going to run for the first down. What he does so well. Headed for the end zone. Touchdown, Prescott, the Heisman Trophy candidate.
Goes to the end zone. And caught. Touchdown, De'Runnya Wilson.
Pulls down the snap. Goes for the touchdown and got it.
Jamion Lewis wants to throw it. Prescott's wide open. He has a touchdown catch this year, and now he's got two.
Prescott running and trying to dive to the end zone. He got in. Touchdown, Dak Prescott. Prescott throws, and it's pulled in. Breaking a tackle is Fred Brown to the house. Touchdown, Mississippi State.
Here goes Prescott. There goes Prescott.
That's what it sounded like.
You could almost take the whole 3 hours and do those, couldn't you?
Oh, well, he's got enough of them.
I mean, he had them. That's what I'm talking about.
If I played every one of them, no doubt about it. Real quick here on the Country Pleasing text line. Country Pleasing sausage in grocery store on grocery store shelves throughout the Southeast. Gator Nation says, another big win for the Cubbies. Best record in baseball, 4-1. Holy cow, he says. I like a good holy cow every now and then. Matt Daddy says, hashtag Hail State. The bald guy says, time to change stations. 3 hours of Homer radio. Yeah, that's okay. You can go somewhere else. We'll be all right. You will, too.
Is he talking about the fact that you do a lot of baseball home run clips?
Yeah, well, he didn't want me talking about Dak's birthday. He didn't like Dak. Oh. He's not a State fan. He doesn't like the State. He didn't like Dak, and that's okay. That's all right. Not everybody can or does. You know, right. So from one bald guy to another, I would just repeat the great line from the movie Tombstone. Well, bye. Joey says Dak is not 27. He's 28. My bad. I can't think of everything. All right, though. Here is the question. Who is the greatest college quarterback in Mississippi college football history?
Wow.
What's the answer?
Well, my knee jerk is Archie Manning.
Okay, Archie.
And then maybe a 1A, 1B with Dak in there.
Okay, Dak. Now
Reggie Collier wasn't too bad.
Right. Yeah, Derek. That's right. Derek on watching on Periscope says bye Felicia. That's the new version of well bye from Tombstone. Bye Felicia. Okay, but all right. So you say everybody knee jerk Archie Manning. You obviously then are going to discuss Eli Manning. You're going to discuss Dak Prescott, and you said Reggie Collier. You got to talk about Brett Favre. Tim on Facebook just said Brett Favre. C-Note, who's watching on YouTube, said Eli Manning.
But you're saying Mississippi
I said,
college quarterback.
The way I worded the question.
Right.
Who's the greatest quarterback in the history of Mississippi college football or college football in Mississippi? Who is it?
And so their pro careers, if they went on to an NFL career, is not material to this.
I don't think it is
discussion.
I don't think it is. I don't think the pro career and what they did for their pro teams or are doing for their pro teams is material to the question that I'm asking. Billy on Twitter. I'm Radio Wyatt on Twitter. Billy said it. He said Steve McNair. Mr. Davis on Periscope, Steve McNair. Derek on Facebook, Steve McNair.
Well, this will rile some people up, probably, Matt. But if you want to, I think Willie Totten was better than Steve McNair when they were in college.
Okay, Willie Totten played at Mississippi Valley. Was a decade before McNair at Alcorn?
Yeah.
Okay. See, I would have to pull his up and look. And I know that the thing is, Willie Totten played with Jerry Rice. Right?
Exactly, with Archie Gunslinger Cooley.
Right. You could argue that Willie had players that Steve McNair didn't have at Alcorn. But I would tell you this, John, is that I'm pretty sure if I pull up McNair, now I know again, it's the thing that sort of held him back in the whole Heisman deal, which I think was the biggest Heisman snub we've ever had, was McNair not winning it simply because he didn't play at FBS or Division I. But what I'm saying is, I'm going to pull up McNair's numbers, and nobody compares to Steve McNair and what he did in college. Now,
the term Air McNair, right?
Right. And they gave him I told you this, they gave Steve McNair the nickname when Michael Jordan was in his heyday. Think about what you've got to be and be doing for you to get the nickname Air, and everybody just accept it as, yeah, that's appropriate. That fits. In the era of Michael Jordan. Okay. Now, it's Dak's birthday. That's what led me to ask the question. Because there are a lot of people, a whole lot of people, and I'm afraid and I'm out to change it. I'm going to do my part to, when there's opportunities, Dak's birthday, to reestablish this thought process among fans in the state of Mississippi. I'm out to change it. I want people looking at things with their head and not with their heart. The first thing out of your mouth today was Archie Manning. I know it was a different era. It was a million years ago. But numbers don't even compare. They don't even compare. Say Archie versus Steve McNair. Say Archie versus Dak.
Well, what about Archie versus Alabama versus McNair versus Mississippi Valley State or Jackson State?
It's a different deal. It is. Yeah. And that's why it's so hard to compare these eras and all this kind of stuff. See, and that's why if I steadfast say I'm going to argue that Steve McNair was the greatest quarterback in the history of college football in Mississippi, then automatically we then start weighing on the scale SWAC competition versus what Dak played against, what Eli played against. And maybe we're discounting Eli. His numbers are phenomenal in college too. But when you look back at the career of Dak Prescott and kind of where he is in certain things, I mean, for Pete's sake, right now, in the history of Southeastern Conference football, and JB, you're bringing up, the level of SEC competition. Well, listen, in the history of Southeastern Conference football, the totality of it, Dak Prescott is fourth all time in touchdowns responsible for. Only three other guys, and you're talking about who? Like Tebow's one of them, and, I don't know who the other two are. I'm not sure the others are both quarterbacks. I'd look it up. You look at where he stands, total yards. Dak is, against that level of competition, Dak is fourth all time in the SEC in total yards. Only three other SEC football players in history have more total yards than Dak did. Yet, if I ask the question, 5 out of 10 people never consider McNair, and about 4 out of the other 10 never consider Dak. We start pointing at other people. And I just think we got to look at it in terms of reality. I think the numbers back it up. I think the careers back it up. And their pro careers are only just icing on the cake. We're just talking about their college career. I think every metric backs it up. Steve McNair 1, Dak Prescott 2, the best college quarterbacks, the best quarterbacks in the history of Mississippi college football. I think every metric you could use to argue it, you got it with those two.
All right, I got the most passing touchdowns in the history since 1956 in the SEC. This is passing, not total touchdowns.
Yeah, passing. Yeah.
All right, you got Aaron Murray is number 1 with 121.
Yeah, how about
Danny
that?
Warfel at 114, Drew Lock at 99, Peyton Manning at 89, and Chris Leak at 88, rounding out the top 5. You got Dak Prescott at number 20 with 70. And in the break, I'll try to find out total touchdowns.
Okay, and then we'll come back and go to Chris. I appreciate Chris hanging on. And, JB, you know what's interesting about that? How about the fact that there's, only 2? Or is it 3 guys who have over 100 total passing touchdowns in their careers in the SEC?
Just 2.
Just
Aaron
2.
Murray and Danny Warfel.
Isn't that amazing?
Yep.
I mean, and Peyton Manning knocking on the door there with 90-something if you look at, just the SEC. Really interesting stuff. Great comments, too, coming in on all the live streams. Chris, I'm coming to your phone call next. Just getting started with y'all here on this Wednesday. I'm Matt in the Farm Bureau studio. Stay with me.
There's a lot of noise
Farm Bureau Insurance stands ready to provide financial relief to our communities in this time of crisis. This includes a one-time credit to all personal auto policyholders, a donation of $500,000 to the Mississippi Food Network, and additional payment options for those hit the hardest, all while continuing to service customer claims as well. But this is the time to go above and beyond. These are a few ways we're keeping the Farm Bureau promise. To learn more, talk to your agent or visit us online. Go with the home team.
Every farmer understands their farm can't thrive without some good partners like sun, soil, and rain. And farmers in North Mississippi also rely on another important partner, Mississippi Land Bank, because land and farm financing are Mississippi Land Bank's primary focus. We've grown alongside these farmers' crops for more than 100 years. We understand what a farmer needs, and we know the lay of the land in North Mississippi, and that's where I stand.
Hey, like my hog hat. That stands for Country Pleasin' Sausage. Country Meat Packers, a great Mississippi company. Let me tell you a little bit about them, huh? You want to know the reason that you need to sit down at the table and say, country pleasin', please? Here's why. It all starts with hand-picked, pure pork. No parts, no stuff. It's hand-picked ham, bacons, pork loins, the real deal. They produce Country Pleasin' in small batches also, which means consistency in every package. Spices, fresh ones that are mixed daily on site right there at the plant in Florence. The hand-picked pure pork is coarse ground for an old-style snappy bite, better flavor. Now, their smokehouses are not cookie-cutter houses either. They are designed and built for country meat packers and for their own smoking methods. And they use hickory logs that they split daily on site. They don't use hickory sawdust. The logs produce a better smoke, a stronger flavor. It's the real deal. They use a natural hog casing for their sausage. It's soaked in vinegar for a tender snap. Country Pleasin' sausage is smoked in a 4-hour pure smoke process for the best color and flavor. And here's the thing, it's hand cut, so the package experience is great as well. When you check it out on grocery store shelves throughout the Southeast, you'll see what I'm talking about. And frankly, let me put it this way. It's the best tasting sausage you'll put in your mouth every time, period. That's Country Pleasin'. Have yourself a Country Pleasin' morning, and always text the show on the Country Pleasin' text line.
Guys, 2020 is here. So new year, that means we got some new products, and I know you guys are probably getting ready for this year coming up. So a lot of people in the equipment world, things kind of go in trends, I guess, if you want to say it. So kind of the first big thing for 2020 that we look at when we start evaluating our business is going to be our turf equipment. That's kind of the first big push, because once everything, the water dries up and the grass starts growing, this is what everybody's looking to get. So we've got Kubota, we've got Toro, we carry the new Wright stand-up mower. Doesn't look like much, and it's dirty as all get out. But this thing is, and it costs just as much as zero turn. Not a cheap unit at all. I mean, if you go out there and look at that zero turn, this thing right here, I mean, it's got all your components from your big pumps to your commercial engine to your large steel deck. And these guys were the first ones to make the standard mower. So we added this product last year, and I was just trying to kind of wade in the water with it just to kind of see what they would do. Number one stand-on mower out there. If you do your own research, get online, all roads are going to basically lead back to Wright. So and Red Max, so from the handheld to the Red Max mowers, we have everything here at Davini. You've got homeowner mowers, starting with a 100 series, going up to the 400 series, going up to your full-blown commercial 7.
Pretty interesting. On the live stream on YouTube, C-Note said, for those who have said McNair only played in the SWAC, that's why he had those numbers. Look at what he did in the NFL. My point is he would have similar numbers or better. That's where I fall, is that, Steve McNair would have been in the running for the Heisman anywhere he played. He was Superman wherever he went and would have been. That's what I think. Chris has been hanging on patiently for a long time here on the Davini Equipment phone. Davini Equipment, Madison and in Jackson. Chris, thanks for doing that. What's up?
How you doing, man?
Just right. How are you?
Pretty good. So the running question that I always hear, and I always hear this comment because it impressed the Cowboys people. I listen to a lot of Cowboys podcasts too because I'm a huge Cowboys fan. But what they like to say is when the scouts came back from Mississippi State looking at Dak Prescott, the first thing the scouts said is, where's all the players when they got there? They had just went to number one, and Dak was the only person that they could pick out that was an NFL caliber person. Of course, we know that there's a few on the defense, but I want to know who were the receivers that these people were throwing to.
Yeah.
Because if I'm not wrong, didn't every one of the other quarterbacks that we named, even Steve McNair, didn't they play with a guy that played in the NFL?
I'm going to need some help with that. I should know it, but I want to know if there was an Alcorn receiver that Steve played with when he was in college that was also an NFL player. I don't know off the top of my head, but Chris, you talk about State, I can recall those. And now as we look at it, here we are, 5-6 years after that college career for Dak, and one receiver that Dak played with is in the NFL right now, and that's actually Fred Brown, who you remember was a Jackson high school player, went to Mississippi State, was never like the main target. Derunya was always the main target. Late in Fred's career, he got kicked out of school. There was a school work issue. It was never really confirmed what it was, but to his credit, Fred just kept working and has never quit. He landed on the practice squad for the Colts. Then he landed on the Rams, and they move him up. And now he's actually signed a contract with Denver and is one of their receivers. He's going to play for the Denver Broncos and you got to be really proud of him. But he's the one pass catcher that made it had a pro career that Dak played with.
Right, and but Derunya should have been in the NFL because he could have done it. They just said how slow he was. But, look how much bigger he was than everybody else.
Well, but everybody in the NFL is big.
Slow he was.
That's the thing, though. Everybody in the NFL is big. Everybody in the NFL is big and strong. And you just don't have any NFL receivers out there running 4.8, 4.7, 4.8. They're not out there. They're all those. Look at Julio Jones. Julio Jones is big and as strong as Derunya, and Julio's running 4.3.
I can't remember who it was, but wasn't two of Eli's receivers in the NFL?
Yeah, y'all may have to help me with that, too.
I'm pretty sure that Willie Totten, I know he had Jerry Rice, but I'm pretty sure one of McNair's guys, wasn't that one of the guys that played on the Greatest Show on Turf?
I've got to look it up. You may be right, Chris, because it seems like we want to say there was one that he played with. I just don't remember. I'd have to go look it up.
Yeah.
I'm a terrible radio host right now.
I mean, the name just popped in my head, but I don't think it's it. So I could be wrong, but I mean, people like to call me out when I'm wrong.
I'm wrong all the time. Yeah, it is what it is. Chris, I appreciate it.
Go have a great day, and I'll talk to you later.
All right. Tebow, number one all-time in the SEC touchdowns responsible for. I mean, he's scoring touchdowns. And people go, well, quarterback's about throwing a ball. And it is. But to me, you got to be a football player. And we kind of live in an era of the dual-threat quarterbacks. There's many, many, many of them. That's why the numbers are really kind of elevated in that category. But 7 points is 7 points. I don't care if you throw it in there, run it in there, walk it in there, crawl it in there, catch it, hand it off, recover it in the end zone. 7 points is 7 points. I don't care how you do it. Somebody going, touchdowns responsible for, that includes rushing. Let's just talk about quarterbacks who threw it in the end zone. Well, that's a passing conversation. That's like saying, well, Bo Jackson scored, 20 touchdowns one year. But this other guy over here, Billy Bob Roebuck, scored 25. But Roebuck ran them in backwards. He ran backwards into the end zone, so those don't count. Well, that's just stupid. They all count. So total touchdowns responsible for in their entire SEC career. Tim Tebow's number one with 145. Aaron Murray, number 2, 137. Danny Werfel, number 3 at 122. And Dak Prescott, number 4 at 114 touchdowns. Nick Fitzgerald's in the top 6. He's at number 6, tied with Chris Leak and Peyton Manning. Peyton Manning, 101 total touchdowns in his career at Tennessee. Chris Leak, 101 at Florida. And Nick Fitzgerald, 101 at Mississippi State. Now, here's if you wanted to have a different conversation about this, you look at touchdowns responsible for in their SEC careers. Tim Tebow, number 1. Number 4, Dak Prescott. Number 6, Nick Fitzgerald. Number 6, Chris Leak. 4 of the top 10 played for Dan Mullen. If you want to have a different conversation about this stuff. Pretty incredible. But, it is a little bit of kind of like an off-season topic, but it's not. Today's Dak's birthday. I started thinking about it when I pulled up his stats, and I start looking at it, going, in his 4-year career, he throws 70 touchdowns. He ran 41 more and caught 3. The guy throws for, he needed 600 and something more yards to be a 10,000-yard passer in his career. Threw for 3,793 yards his senior year, 29 touchdowns, 5 picks, and 66%. I mean, you start looking at throwing stats. This is what's crazy to me. This is something that's unbelievable to me. For instance, when Dak was coming out of college, what was the knock? What was the narrative? What did some of these national talking heads say about him? Right, like he was a tight end. He couldn't throw. Number 1, mechanically, Dak has always been a beautiful thrower, mechanically. Feet and arm slot and ball coming out high. He's always had great mechanics. Like Tim Tebow wishes he had the kind of throwing mechanics that Dak Prescott had. That's the one thing. Anybody that evaluates him would tell you that. And the thing is, he came out of his career, a career 63% completion percentage in his career, 7th all-time in the SEC, top 10. Narratives and reality don't often mix. I guess what I'm saying is I looked it up, and it's 2020. And I believe that if you put me at the podium in front of anybody and anyone and said, Matt, I want you to argue this question. Who's the best quarterback in the history of college football in the state of Mississippi? I'd start with Steve McNair, and then I go to Dak Prescott, and I end it right there. That's the 2. Any metric, any stat, any number, I got everything I need to back it all up right there. I think that's talking with my head versus talking with my heart on that discussion. All right. Lots and lots of texts on the Country Pleasing text line, Country Pleasing Sausage, on grocery store shelves throughout the Southeast. We got a vote for Steve McNair. Louvier says, no offense to my favorite player of all time, Archie, but Steve McNair is the best. Johnny Reb says Jake Gibbs. I'd have to go look it up. I don't know enough about it. It was kind of so long ago. And I know he was an unbelievable athlete, multi-sport athlete. Frankus Deltankus said Air McNair. Maybe I did get it right. It says he was born in 93, not in 92, so he is 27 years old. Talking about Dak's birthday today. Chris from Macon also said Air McNair. Denzel, Steve McNair and Dak. Trey, Steve McNair. Miko says, no, sir. Willie Totten was a pocket passer only. McNair did it all, and I saw them both play. Man, you talk about a luxury. JB, I wish I could have seen those guys play in person.
I did. I saw McNair and Totten play at the Memorial Stadium.
Really? I guess only probably 10 years apart. That is unbelievable. How lucky are you?
Well, I think Totten was more 81, 82 in there and graduated, and McNair was 84, if I got that number right. And I think one thing that I remember about McNair that I don't know if everybody else remembers is that he was offered a number of scholarships to SEC schools, Florida being one, and but the reason he didn't want to go there is because they wanted to make him a running back.
Right, wanted to play a different position.
Right, and he was also a heck of a defensive back that set a record for interceptions till Terrell Buckley broke it in Mississippi. So good two-way player as well.
Well, and it just shows you that the great players are just great. They're just great at everything and will be great no matter where you put them. I could put Tim Tebow at linebacker. He'd be a great linebacker. I can put Dak Prescott at tailback. He'd be a great tailback. Somebody mentioned Todd Jordan in high school at Tupelo. People forget how, Todd Jordan was an elite recruit coming out of high school at Tupelo High School. Mad Mail person, Chad Kelly blew the numbers out of the water for 2 years. Yeah, he did. But it's 2 years versus 3 or 2 years versus 4, and it's hard to stack that up against McNair and against Dak. Nick says, put McNair on an FBS team back then, and he would be Tommy Frazier except with a cannon. There's no doubt about it. Can't wait to get some more of your texts. Bates and Tip, 100 grand, Jared, everybody coming to y'all next. Stick around.
Farm Bureau Insurance stands ready to provide financial relief to our communities in this time of crisis. This includes a one-time credit to all personal auto policyholders, a donation of $500,000 to the Mississippi Food Network, and additional payment options for those hit the hardest, all while continuing to service customer claims as well. But this is the time to go above and beyond. These are a few ways we're keeping the Farm Bureau promise. To learn more, talk to your agent or visit us online. Go with the home team.
Every farmer understands their farm can't thrive without some good partners like sun, soil, and rain. And farmers in North Mississippi also rely on another important partner, Mississippi Land Bank, because land and farm financing are Mississippi Land Bank's primary focus. We've grown alongside these farmers' crops for more than 100 years. We understand what a farmer needs, and we know the lay of the land in North Mississippi, and that's where I stand.
Campuses are empty. The arenas are silent. For now. People here today are few and far between. but soon a crowd will show up. It's not a matter of if football will be played here. It's a matter of when.
I'll be there. I'm sure you will be too. I'll see you there.
It won't be long now. Can you imagine the return of the crowds to see the return of the team? What a day that will be. And it will be soon. You know, you hear me say that C-Spire is the number one network in Mississippi. That's unquestioned. They are another great Mississippi company as well and really support local sports. High school, you know, you see their logo and their advertisements at Ole Miss and at Mississippi State and at Southern Miss and everywhere. And you may have heard this, you may not have, though. I mentioned this recently on the show, but there's a new thing they have at C-Spire called the C-Spire Health app. Okay, go to cspirehealth.com, read about it, sign up, and you put that app on your phone. And basically, if you have a minor ailment, a sickness, a minor health issue, something that, you know, we're not talking about a broken leg or a heart attack. I mean, you know, minor sickness ailments, instead of having to go to the doctor for that and sit in the doctor's office for an hour, if you live out, you know, drive 40 minutes just to get to the doctor's office, you pick up the phone, click on the C-Spire Health app, and within minutes, you are video chatting, like FaceTime. You're video conferencing, talking to a medical professional at University Medical Center. One-on-one, live conversation. All right, I want to go back to a comment real quick from a little bit ago on the YouTube live stream from Hey Bub, who said McNair had 2 wide receivers in the NFL, Torrance Small and Cedric Tillman. And those names kind of ring a bell, and I need to go back and you know, kind of look them up individually. That was one question that came up, is kind of like who played with who and with what around them in their careers, as well as we always seem to talk about the level of competition. The question earlier, we got to talking, if you're just tuning in here in the Farm Bureau Insurance studio, I was talking about today being Dak Prescott's birthday. I still don't know that we've definitively figured out if he's 27 or 28, but he's in that range. Okay. He's sub 30. But then it led to the question, who's the greatest quarterback in the history of Mississippi college football here in our state? And I mean, I think Dak's way up there in the conversation, but I, as well as so many others, it seems like we've kind of keyed in on Steve McNair. It's just, you cannot ignore what he did at Alcorn, and then, you know, elevating them on this national platform and kind of taking them with him along on the Heisman run and becoming Air McNair. And his numbers are just, I've read those to you before. His numbers are hard to even fathom, frankly. 100 grand on the Country Pleasing text line, 885 ESPN. Y'all text me. That's one way to communicate on the show. Country Pleasing sausage, the best anywhere. I had a section about that long. I cut it off and sliced it up, threw it in the pan, had it for breakfast this morning, of jalapeno and cheddar. Y'all telling that? Can you tell that I like that flavor? I probably talk about that flavor the most. 100 grand says, Matt, what's going on? Steve McNair, hands down. He just doesn't get the credit because he played his college ball at Alcorn. I think there's something to that. I mean, I do. Now, Tip, I knew that Donald Driver played at Alcorn, but I didn't think that he actually played with Steve McNair. Bates is asking that also.
No, he joined Alcorn in 95.
Okay, so
he was drafted by the Packers in 99.
Okay, so Driver was a little younger than McNair.
That's correct.
Gator Nation says, I'm a Tebow guy, but I've never seen a college quarterback better than McNair. Dak is not even in the McNair conversation. I've done this before. We're going to do it again. Just because when I read them out loud, we were talking about the record scratch effect. The what? I want to do that now for Steve McNair. Let's see. Heisman voting, he was third in the Heisman voting in 94. I'm having a hard time pulling up his numbers here. I'll get them pulled up for you because they're unbelievable. Let me get over here to the Country Pleasing text line. By the way, too, we got a countdown of 100 teams in 100 days coming up here in the show. We'll push it back a little bit later in the show. Team number 38 today. Steve Robertson going to be on with us to start hour number 2. We'll talk a little recruiting with him. Other people were asking about Donald Driver. Brown Hornet said Isaac Holt was the receiver from Alcorn State that played for the Rams. So Holt at Alcorn State?
Yeah, he played at Alcorn State, but he was 82 to 85.
Yeah, so he was way ahead. I mean, he was...
Yeah, he played with McNair's brother, Fred, that was quarterback back then.
Okay.
Who is currently the coach at Alcorn State.
That's right. He's currently the coach there. Yeah. Well, this website is kind of going on me right now, so I'm having a hard time pulling up Steve's college numbers. I've looked at them before. I guarantee they're on his Wikipedia page. I just want to look at it. And the thing about Steve McNair is here it is. His pro career, unbelievable. This is what we point out. The year, let's just look at his Heisman year when he was up for the Heisman. He should have won it, 94. He played in 11 games in 1994. He threw for 5,377 yards and 47 touchdowns. That's just throwing a ball. I think that particular year he also rushed, for 900 and something yards that year also? That senior year, 904 rushing, 5,377 passing, 56 total touchdowns. Combined yardage of 6,281. I mean, look, the guy as a true freshman at Alcorn State in 91 threw for 2,800 yards and 24 touchdowns. Sophomore, 3,500 yards and 29 touchdowns. Junior, 3,197 yards, 22 touchdowns. These are just throwing numbers. The guy's rushing for thousands of yards on top of all of this. I mentioned in 92, his sophomore year, he throws for 3,500 yards and 29 touchdowns. He also ran for 10 more. And they still somehow lost 4 games. I mean, we just go stupid numbers. He's up there. There are a lot of people who don't like the conversation if you don't include certain names. But, and frankly, from a numbers standpoint, a sheer numbers standpoint across a 4-year career, when somebody goes, Dak's not close, well, he actually is kind of close. Now, he didn't have the numbers, but he's kind of close. And when we start looking at numbers across a 4-year career for others, I was talking about Dak's numbers, right? Like in his career, just under 10,000 passing yards and 70 passing touchdowns in his career. His senior year, he was at 3,793 passing yards, 29 touchdowns. That was his senior year. And he really threw the heck out of the football his senior year. A lot of people brought up Brett Favre at Southern Miss. Look, don't blink at it. Now, Favre's numbers in his 4 years at Southern Miss, they certainly pale in comparison to 4-year numbers of Steve McNair. They pale in comparison to 4-year numbers of Dak. But when you go back and you look, it was a different era. The offenses were totally different. They really were totally different. And Favre's numbers for his era at that time were great. He's 52% completion across his career, threw for 7,695 yards in his career. But his best years throwing the ball were his sophomore, junior year. It seemed like he got banged up some, his senior year. But in his time at Southern Miss, Favre never had a year where he threw for over 20 touchdowns or 20 touchdowns or more. The most touchdowns he threw, Favre did, his sophomore year, 1988 at Southern Miss. He threw 16 touchdowns, 5 picks, and 2,200 yards. The most yards that Favre threw for in a season at Southern Miss, his junior year, 89, 2,588 yards. Great college player, even better pro player. Nobody arguing that, but with the context of it being, who's the greatest college quarterback we've ever had in this state? It's Steve McNair, number 1. It's Dak Prescott, number 2. Delta Dog agrees on the Country Pleasing text line. Unnamed texter said, can you ask Steve about whether or not Woodard is going to go pro? Yeah, Steve Robertson coming on. I'll see if I can work that in there. We're primarily going to get into a football conversation. We'll see where it goes beyond that. But I'll see if I can remember on the basketball question for you. Denzel says, I know it's off topic, but since it's National Chicken Wing Day, yes, it is. The honey sriracha barbecue wings at Blue Canoe in Tupelo is fantastic. Haven't had them. They're not. I could walk there from where I live, Denzel, and I appreciate the recommendation. Today is National Chicken Wing Day. Give me, I don't want honey barbecue. I don't believe in boneless wings. Anybody that tells me these are boneless wings, well, guess what? They're not wings. They're going to have bones in them to be real wings. Boneless wings don't exist in nature. Sorry to bust everybody's bubble. Okay,
I'm 100% with you.
Well, good.
They don't taste as good as the bone-in.
Well, they can't.
No, I mean, they just don't. They're not natural.
It's not. Don't tell me they're wings. Tell me they're nuggets. Okay. I know what that is. Chicken fingers, got it. They're not wings. Wings have bones in them. Otherwise, it ain't a wing. A wing. And the flavor I want is just barbecue. I dip it in ranch and, here we go. Gator Nation says, I'll never forgive Spurrier for this. For what? Never forgive Spurrier for what? For recruiting Steve McNair as a defensive back? Well, I promise you, he wasn't the only one. Dirty Frank. He's throwing a fly into the ointment here on the Country Pleasing text line. He says Dak was 1-3 versus his rival. Yeah. Maybe that says a lot about what was recruited around Dak versus what other teams were recruiting around their quarterbacks. It's a theory. Hey, and State had a whole bunch of good players. They're in the NFL. But what about on offense? Have you ever looked at the NFL numbers for Mississippi State right now, alums? I mean, it is large. I'm talking 90% of it is defensive players. I mean, it's almost all, like 99% of it's defensive players. Squirrel says, true, boneless wings don't exist in nature. They don't. I'm glad people like them. Eat them. You can do what you want. It's a free country. I ain't touching them. All right. Hour 2 coming up. We'll switch the subject and chat with Steve. Stick around.
Ever feel like Farm Bureau Insurance stands ready to provide financial relief to our communities in this time of crisis. This includes a one-time credit to all personal auto policyholders, a donation of $500,000 to the Mississippi Food Network, and additional payment options for those hit the hardest, all while continuing to service customer claims as well. But this is the time to go above and beyond. These are a few ways we're keeping the Farm Bureau promise. To learn more, talk to your agent or visit us online. Go with the home team.
Every farmer understands their farm can't thrive without some good partners like sun, soil, and rain. And farmers in North Mississippi also rely on another important partner, Mississippi Land Bank, because land and farm financing are Mississippi Land Bank's primary focus. We've grown alongside these farmers' crops for more than 100 years. We understand what a farmer needs, and we know the lay of the land in North Mississippi, and that's where I stand.
How you like my hog hat? That stands for Country Pleasin' Sausage. Country Meat Packers is a great Mississippi company. Let me tell you a little bit about them, huh? You want to know the reason that you need to sit down at the table and say, country pleasin', please? Here's why. It all starts with hand-picked, pure pork. No parts, no stuff. It's hand-picked ham, bacons, pork loins, the real deal. They produce country pleasin' in small batches also, which means consistency in every package. Spices, fresh ones that are mixed daily on site right there at the plant in Florence. The hand-picked pure pork is coarse ground for an old-style snappy bite, better flavor. Now, their smokehouses are not cookie-cutter houses either. They are designed and built for country meat packers and for their own smoking methods. And they use hickory logs that they split daily on site. They don't use hickory sawdust. The logs produce a better smoke, a stronger flavor. It's the real deal. They use a natural hog casing for their sausage. It's soaked in vinegar for a tender snap. Country Pleasin' Sausage is smoked in a 4-hour pure smoke process for the best color and flavor. And here's the thing, it's hand cut, so the package experience is great as well. When you check it out on grocery store shelves throughout the Southeast, you'll see what I'm talking about. And frankly, let me put it this way. It's the best tasting sausage you'll put in your mouth every time, period. That's Country Pleasin'. Have yourself a Country Pleasin' morning, and always text the show on the Country Pleasin' text line.
Guys, 2020 is here. So new year, that means we got some new products, and I know you guys are probably getting ready for this year coming up. So a lot of people in the equipment world, you know, things kind of go in trends, I guess, if you want to say it. So kind of the first big thing for 2020 that we look at when we start evaluating our business is going to be our turf equipment. That's kind of the first big push, because once everything, the water dries up and the grass starts growing, this is what everybody's looking to get. So we've got Kubota, we've got Toro, we carry the new Wright stand-up mower. Doesn't look like much, and it's dirty as all get out. But this thing is, and it costs just as much as zero turn. Not a cheap unit at all. I mean, if you go out there and look at that zero turn, this thing right here, I mean, it's got all your components from your big pumps to your commercial engine to your large steel deck. And these guys were the first ones to make the standard mower. So we added this product last year, and I was just trying to kind of wade in the water with it just to kind of see what they would do. Number one stand-on mower out there. If you do your own research, get online, all roads are going to basically lead back to Wright. So Red Max, so, you know, from the handheld to the Red Max mowers, we have everything here at Davini. You've got homeowner mowers, starting with a 100 series, going up to the 400 series, going up to your full-blown commercial 700 series and your diesel mowers. Yeah, so we've already gotten a lot of calls this year, commercial guys. They're getting ready to plan this coming up season, this coming up year, trying to get their equipment needs ready to go for their customers. So, you know, a big part of our business is dealing with the landscape contractors, those guys that are out every day busting it during the summertime, you know, cutting yards, cutting lawns, maintaining properties. We've got everything that you guys need to have your season going, and then we have the service to back it up as well, service and parts to back it up as well. Just like this machine right here, this is your Z781i, which is going to be your electronic fuel injected Kubota 60-inch commercial unit. These just came out last year. Big hit for us last season. So really looking forward to getting more of these out in the field for you guys this year. So if you've got a business, landscape contractors, you guys come see us.
First up, Farm Bureau. You hear me talk about Farm Bureau Insurance, Mississippi Farm Bureau Insurance. And here's a couple things I want you to know about Farm Bureau Insurance in Mississippi. Number one, they call themselves the home team. There's a reason for that. It's not just that most of your local agents throughout all 82 counties are people that are from right here. In terms of, like, if anything ever did need to go up the chain a little bit, Jackson is as far as you're going. It's not another state. It's not an 800 number with some answering service. They call themselves the home team at Farm Bureau, and they really are your hometown heroes. You know, you hear me say that C-Spire is the number one network in Mississippi. That's unquestioned. They are another great Mississippi company as well and really support local sports. High school, you know, you see their logo and their advertisements in at Ole Miss and at Mississippi State and at Southern Miss.
Online at thezone1059.com and on your radio at ESPN 105.9 The Zone.
Hour 2. Off and running. I'm Matt in the Farm Bureau Insurance Studio. Farm Bureau Insurance across the great state of Mississippi. Hit me up on the Davini Equipment phone line, Davini Equipment, Madison, and in Jackson. Call me. I'd love to hear your voice, 995-1059. And in just a couple of minutes, we'll talk with Steve Robertson. If everything goes according to plan, signals connect, and so on and so forth, we'll talk with him because there's recruiting news. I need to learn it. I will let y'all in on a secret here. And the guests, a lot of times who come on this show will confirm this. There's no like pre-planning of what I'm going to ask, and I don't call them and get to have like a 15-minute conversation. I'm already versed, and we're just going to repeat this for you. When I have a guest on, it's generally, and 99 out of 100 times, it's I need to ask them questions so I'll know. And in this case, there's been a flurry of wide receiver recruiting for Mississippi State, and I just want to learn a little bit about it. So that's coming up in a few minutes. We also have the countdown of 100 teams in 100 days brought to you by Matt Anderson Properties with National Land Realty. And today is team number 38, and it hits very close to home. We had a fun first hour. It was fun for me anyway. This just kind of organic conversation that bloomed from celebrating Dak Prescott's birthday. He's 27 or 28. I just know he was born on July 29th. We couldn't figure it out according to Wikipedia. And the conversation of the greatest college quarterbacks we've ever had in the state of Mississippi, McNair 1, Dak 2. But you know what? If we're strictly talking about throwing the football, now total touchdowns, total yards, Dak's on up there. But when you look at the throwing and the passing numbers that Eli Manning put up in his time at Ole Miss, and I tell you what now, this dude, and see, he did it basically in 3 years. His sophomore year was unbelievable, wasn't it? The fact that Eli Manning in his sophomore year, see, his freshman year, Eli only played in 6 games. So Eli Manning didn't really have what you would call like a full-on 4-year career. He really had a 3-year career and change, 3.5 years. Back then you're playing 11 games. Made up for it in a couple of bowl games, but it was primarily 3 years, his sophomore, junior, senior season. His sophomore year, he was just under 3,000 yards passing at 29.48. But he completed 31 touchdowns and only 9 interceptions. His junior year, 3,400 yards, 21 touchdowns, 15 picks. And his senior year, he goes for 62%, an even 3,600 yards passing, 29 touchdowns, and only 10 interceptions. His passing numbers were incredible. And you know what? It's actually backed up. I tweeted this just a little bit ago. I know it seems like I'm kind of now hammering away at a nail that's already completely driven in. We're going to change the subject, I promise. But just to drive it home, I tweeted it out. Greatest quarterback in Mississippi college football history. 1, Steve McNair. 2, Dak Prescott. Who's number 3? Brandon Walker from Barstool Sports said 3, Eli, 4, Favre, 5, Reggie Collier. Fun conversation. Appreciate all the feedback. And I am jealous today of Lewis on Facebook. Well, first of all, I'm jealous of JB because he got to see Willie Totten play for Valley, and he got to see Steve Air McNair play for Alcorn. He saw them both in person in Jackson. I'm jealous, but I'm really jealous of Lewis. Lewis on the Facebook live stream says, I saw Archie, McNair, Dak, Totten, Manning, Favre, and Reggie Collier. None better than McNair. Can you imagine being a Mississippian, being born at the right time and the right age to have been able to watch every single one of those players play in person? You're not only talking about the best in this state, you're talking about the best ever. Many of those. And then a few of the best ever in the NFL. One of them still out there trying to do it. And yes, Mary watching on Facebook, it's her birthday too. Maroon Mary, happy birthday to you. Sharing a birthday with Dak. How lucky are you? I know what it feels like, Mary. I get to share a birthday with Jack Crystal. Yeah, pretty cool. Pretty cool. To the bald guy who texted us earlier today in hour 1 and said, here we go, 3 hours of Homer radio. And he's right. I'll admit it. Today's been Homer radio. I don't care. It just is what it is. Real quick, and then I'm coming to Steve. Anthony from Tupelo said it ain't like it was a recruiting blunder to want McNair as a safety or cornerback. He held the state interception record until the kid from Houston broke it about 5-6 years ago. He was great. You could put Steve McNair at any position and he'd be great. He could have been an NFL tight end. No question. All right. Speaking of recruiting, hits and misses and blunders and so on and so forth, let's talk to a guy who's been covering it for 17. This will be his 17th signing class covering recruiting here in Mississippi. Steve Robertson on Twitter. He is at Scout Steve R, and he's on your radio right now. Steve, we have had a fun conversation, and before we get going, I saw on Twitter you interjected with Jackie Parker. What am I missing on that?
One of the greatest, most prolific passers in the history of the game with Mississippi State. Now, they didn't win a lot of football games, and they had to throw it a lot because they were behind. But Jackie Parker was the guy that put up some huge numbers at Mississippi State. And I guess maybe because of the fact I've written a couple books about Mississippi State history, I've become a little fonder of some of those guys. So.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I was thinking as you were talking, I was thinking to myself internally, you ought to know, Steve. You ought to know. Because I think you've had to research that a little bit. I think overall, there's just a million different ways and angles, isn't it, Steve, where we could approach how fortunate we have been as fans in Mississippi to see the players we've seen come through here.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, that's not only that too, but how evenly distributed the great memories are. You mentioned Steve McNair at Alcorn State and Favre at Southern, and there have been some guys that don't pick State or Ole Miss that the whole state kind of cheers for, and that's kind of a cool thing too. And I tell you, speaking about that, history and that sort of stuff too. I had a conversation with a guy over the weekend, reminded me of something I'd forgotten about. Tommy Fard, that played at Mississippi State, was the second player in the history of the SEC to have more than 2,000 yards all-purpose in a season. The first guy to do it, did it the year before, was a guy named Steve Spurrier, and he won the Heisman Trophy that year.
Wow. Isn't that amazing? That is really cool.
Crazy.
Yeah. What a cool nugget that is. I wanted to catch up with you today, Steve, because as I was telling our listeners, and you can attest, it's not like I call you up and talk to you for 30 minutes and get all the information and then bring you on the air. I just get you on because I've got questions I want to ask. and so I want to ask you, I saw this tweet. I was helping my wife and daughter paint. They're painting a room in our house. I saw a tweet about a big wide receiver recruit for Mississippi State, and that's basically all I know. So who was it, the recruit that committed to State yesterday, Steve, and what should we know about him?
Yeah, it's Malik Neighbors out of Como High School there in South Louisiana. And I tell you, this story has kind of taken some time to unfold. When Joe Moorhead first began to recruit Malik Neighbors, he didn't even have a recruiting profile on 247 or Rivals or anybody like that. I mean, he was virtually an unknown, and State was on him pretty early. Well, now he's got over 30 offers, including most of the Southeastern Conference, and wants to play in the air raid. And his good friend Teddy Knox is already committed to Mississippi State. I won't say they're a package deal, but certainly Teddy's influence was certainly a positive for Mississippi State. But he's around 6'1", 190-pound outside receiver with incredible leaping ability. And he doesn't have elite size, but you wouldn't know it in the red zone because they throw the fade to him and he'll go up over the guy and get it. But the thing that impresses me the most is just the competitive nature of this kid. It doesn't matter where the ball is thrown. He just simply finds a way to go make the catch. And that's something that's kind of been hard to find for Mississippi State over the years.
So I'm looking at the sizes of the players that State's going to, potentially throw the football to this year on the outside, Steve. Osiris Mitchell, 6'5". Heath is 6'3". Shavers is 6'6". And they moved Javonte Payton into the slot, and he's a 6'1" guy. So I'm just wondering, are we looking at slots for inside and outsides in this offense? And is this kid going to project to move into the slot when he gets to college?
Well, he's being recruited as an outside receiver, but he is a guy that can play multiple spots. Knox is going to be a slot guy, but Neighbors is going to start out as an outside guy, and then we'll see. We'll see how things progress.
Okay, I'm going to click I'm on the Gene's Page website right now. I'm going to click on football recruiting and commitments, and I'm just looking at this is 2021 class. And I'm looking at these wide receivers, and 2 of them are 4 stars. I'm curious this, Steve. The way the receiver recruiting is going right now, we're not even talking quarterbacks. How does it compare to past recruiting for past coaches at the receiver position right now? And I know it's not signing day yet, but how is it comparing? Are they recruiting better at the receiver position?
Well, I think right now, when you look at the first blush, you'd say, yeah. And you also got Brandon Buckhalter in there, too. Some of those guys that commit early kind of lose their hype a little bit. This is a guy probably that has some upward mobility, and he'll rise in the rankings. But you got 3 very talented receivers, and that's a holdover from the Jim Moorhead class. But I think what happens with Mike Leach is, because of the fact that he is a proven commodity as a play caller, he is going to attract wide receivers that want to catch the football a lot. There's a lot of guys, that signed under Dan Mullen that caught the football a little and blocked a whole lot. And so, Matt, from dealing with wide receivers, they want the football. And so they're going to get it a lot in this offense. And so I think that a lot of receivers out there kind of see the track record of what's happened at Texas Tech, what's happened at Washington State, and say, you know what, I want to be a part of that. So I think there are some doors on the recruiting trail that are open for Mississippi State that have been closed for many years just because of the brand of offense that Mike Leach is going to bring.
You mentioned Buckhalter from Hartfield, and so he's listed at 6'3", 207. The service there has him as a pretty highly ranked 3-star. You mentioned upward mobility. But he's really built in the mold of that outside receiver lining up on the numbers, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. I don't know if he's quite 207, but okay. Yeah, he's right around 200 pounds, and he's a strong kid. If you watch him play, he plays big. He is the guy that runs through people, and so yeah, I think that he's the guy. You work him on the slant inside, you don't have to worry about him dropping the football.
Yeah, Steve. You haven't even had a practice yet in this offense at State, much less getting close to a game, although we're 38 days away from September the 5th. We'll see what happens. Again, reading the tea leaves, I'm looking at 4-star receivers that are committing. It just seems that regardless of whatever national rank there is, that this staff has been able to hit the ground and recruit to their system right away. Would you say that that's accurate? And how accurate is it, in your opinion?
Well, I think it is accurate. I think one of the things, too, is you have to factor in, too, is that Mike Leach held over the recruiting staff. So you held, Mike Villagrana and Rod Gibson and Brad Peterson and Mason Smith. A lot of these guys are working for Joe Moorhead. And so when the new staff gets there, they're able to kind of hit the ground running because in many respects, a lot of the targets have already been identified and they're already somewhat familiar with Mississippi State. And so you're recruiting some of these receivers, a guy like Malik Neighbors, who Joe Moorhead offered. And now all of a sudden, we may have been just another offer before, but now all of a sudden you're thinking, hey, you fit exactly what we want. And so I think it's been a good marriage in that respect that Mississippi State had already identified many of these players, and then Mike Leach comes in and sells them a brand of offense that they find very entertaining.
Steve Robertson on your radio. Follow him on Twitter if you don't already. It's just at ScoutSteveR. So Malik Neighbors from Louisiana, 4-star receiver, commits to Mississippi State yesterday. You mentioned all the offers that he had. Steve, you also mentioned State offered him first, kind of discovered him, the Moorhead staff. That obviously had to have helped in this recruitment. Who was State competing against the most for this guy's commitment?
Well, the final two were Georgia and Mississippi State, and before that, he had a handful of other schools. Ole Miss was in the mix with him a little bit. He had an Alabama offer, Arizona State, but he's the guy that wanted to stay reasonably close to home. He wanted to stay in the Southeast, but he was kind of considering SEC schools, and I think by and large people expected that to happen. LSU was a school that was on him pretty early, didn't offer, and that was kind of the worry, and probably still is. Hey, when LSU wants in the state of Louisiana, they generally get. And so you got to recruit this kid and just hope the relationship holds up if they decide to come back late. But he's had interest from some of the best teams in the country.
Too, Steve, we're talking about recruiting through that system. As I just scroll through, like that's the 2021 class, there are 3 4-stars on there over at Gene's page. One's a quarterback and 2 are receivers. And it's just like, the highly ranked recruits anyway they're coming in there to throw and catch. I mean, it's pretty clear on paper.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question. And you need that this year because, and to be fair, the state of Mississippi, the talent pool this year appears to be a little more shallow than it's been in recent years. But, we didn't get the spring evaluation period. We didn't get the summer camps. There's a lot of those kids that are still kind of unearthed. They haven't had a chance to really get out and be evaluated and kind of put themselves on the showcase. And so I expect to see a real land rush of offers for a lot of these kids once we get into the season. But I think there's going to be a lot of misses this year because I think some schools are going to panic because they haven't had a chance to really evaluate a lot of these kids, but they still got a need at wide receiver, a need at, running back or whatever, and they're going to go get a kid to make sure they have one. And I think the kids are having to make decisions with less information than ever before because they just haven't had the benefit of getting out and being on campus and shaking a man's hand and getting a feel for a campus.
Steve, it's really interesting you bring that up because I've experienced that here because I'm in and have been in the video, the professional realm of the video production world. Recently, I had the opportunity to work with a high school kid who needed a video showing his true, not doctored, his true weight, his height, his hand measurement, his wingspan, his 40-yard dash, his broad jump, even throwing the football some, and needed that in a video form so that he could send it to coaches he's communicating with because the coaches at these colleges were asking for it because there have been no camps. There's been no way for them to go see him or vice versa. And you actually have college coaches with some of the, marginal recruits that may have improved from one year to the next. And the coaches are saying, hey, just send me a video. Show me exactly what you weigh and exactly what you measure. And it's interesting. They're trying their best to evaluate them, but having to do it from a distance. Isn't it? It's a tough spot for these recruits to be in, frankly.
Oh, it is. And you have to sell yourself. It's one of those things, too. I think about what about those kids out there that don't have the resources to put that stuff together? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of other kids out there that, they got a friend like you or like me or somebody that can say, hey, here's a picture and let's do it on video. Would you stand it next to the tape measure so they don't think we're joking, that we're trying to fudgy numbers here. Mm-hmm. But there are a lot of kids that just simply don't have the ability to do that. And so as a result, there will be some quality players, I think, that kind of fall through the cracks that may even end up going to junior college and then kind of emerge as stars down the road. It's just going to be a really weird year because of how little time they've had to evaluate players.
That's right. Steve Robertson on your radio right now, expert in all things Hail State, covers them 24/7, has been doing that for the better part of 2 decades for Gene's page. Y'all follow him on Twitter. It's at ScoutSteveR. Before I turn you loose, Steve, we had a question earlier from a fan on the text line that wanted me to ask you if you had a gauge on the basketball side on what Robert Woodard may or may not do. Might he come back and be a part of the team, or is he going to stick with the draft? What do you think?
That's kind of the million-dollar question right now, isn't it? I mean, It's like last week I had some people close to the family telling me he was leaning towards coming back, but we're beginning to see some projections here in the last couple of days of him in the first round. And I'm told if he gets a guaranteed first-round pick, there's no doubt he's going to come out. Because listen, here, let's be honest about this. There's no guarantee about men's basketball season this year either. Everybody's kind of figuring this thing out. People are just kind of assuming, well, what if there's not a season this year, and what if Robert Woodard doesn't put himself in a position where he can improve his standing? Mm-hmm. Well, then maybe he has to come out, and that's a very difficult decision. But I don't know that I could call it today. Last week I was pretty confident he was coming back, but today I'm probably second-guessing that a little bit. I think it's still very much up in the air.
Boy, that is an interesting point I didn't think of. The what if he says, I'm coming back to school, and then 2 weeks after he says he's coming back to school, he realizes we're not having a season. It's almost like everybody in all these sports, Steve, are giving waivers to make these decisions based on the pandemic. They ought to do that for kids like Robert also, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. And I think that that's the thing about this year. The NCAA having to be a little more flexible with this. I think that's one of the reasons you've seen so many of these waivers for transfers be approved, is because nobody wants the optics on that are so horrible. If you just decide, we're not going to let this kid transfer and be able to play immediately. And so I think there probably has to be some draft considerations because of the fact everything keeps getting pushed back. Now they're going to have an NBA draft combine after all, and they've pushed that back. Well, that's going to be after the drop dead date for the decision for the August 3rd. And so I think they've got to step in at some point and work with the NBA and say, listen, here's what we're going to do. We're going to let these kids go, but if they don't get drafted, we're going to let them come back. And my hope is maybe that opens up something for some legislation in the future for some of these football players that decide to go out and then end up undrafted, to give them the opportunity to come back and play.
Yeah.
There's no point pushing these kids out the door. There's just no point in that.
None whatsoever. I couldn't agree more with that. And as we get a little closer, maybe we get you back, Steve, and have a little further conversation on the basketball side. We're out of time now. It always goes by quickly. It means we have fun talking to you, Steve. So I really appreciate it. Thanks. We'll see you soon. Steve Robertson at Scout Steve R on Twitter. Give him a follow. I hadn't thought about that. So if you're a basketball player, you're on the fence. I go pro, my name's in the draft, or do I come back to school? And you go, well, I need to know more, because if I come back to school and then we don't have a season, what do I come back to school for? So they're going to have to extend that window and kind of be very flexible on waivers and stuff for these guys who are like a Robert Woodard, who's trying to make the decision on what he ought to do. I hadn't even thought about that. There's so much to consider. All right, rolling along in hour number 2. Stick around. I'm Matt in the Farm Bureau studio.